Hello all, a very good evening. This is Dr. Pavni and I am here today to tell you a story. In fact, a very interesting story, the story of our brain or the nervous system. Now, I want all of you to look at the picture here that is on the top. Can you see the picture? What do you see on the top picture? Yes, you see a orchestra, right, where many musicians are playing. But did you notice a man who is standing in the center waving his stick like this? Do you see him? Yes. So he is called the maestro of the orchestra. Now he is not performing anything, right? He is not playing any musical instrument, but still he is very important for the orchestra to function. Did you ever see an orchestra without the maestro? No, rarely, I guess, right? Mostly not. So this presence of this maestro is important for coordinating all the musicians so that you get a beautiful song or a melody. Similarly, if you look at the picture below that, you see different systems of our body. You see, we have the digestive system, respiratory system, excretory system, etc. Now, all these systems also have to be coordinated to function together as a single unit. Now, that function of coordination is done by none other than our nervous system. Now, does the nervous system do only coordination or does it do any other functions? Let us see. The functions of nervous system can be categorized into three main divisions, that is sensation, integration and response. Now let me explain you with an example so that you will understand it much better. For example, I am here in the studio and then I feel that the room is hot. I can sense that this room is hot or the temperature is more. So what am I doing here? What is my nervous system doing? It is sensing the environment around me. That is the first job. That is sensation. Now just sensing something is not important, right? You have to respond to it appropriately. Any response would not work. You have to respond appropriately. Now, to respond appropriately, you have to integrate the information that you have. For example, again, now I am in the studio and this room is hot. What do I do about it? So I analyze, I think, my brain does. So what it does, it integrates all the information. Yeah, this room has a air condition. Maybe I can increase the air condition or switch it on. So that is what it comes up with a response. So sensing, integrating and response. These are the three main functions of our nervous system. And also most importantly, apart from doing these three functions, it also coordinates various systems present in our body. Now this is one example, just a small example that I gave you, the temperature in the room. But do you think life is so simple? Do you think the stimulus or the sensing or the environment around is so simple? Our nervous system is always busy processing thousands of stimuli that we normally receive. Even when you are sleeping, we think that when we are sleeping, we are not doing anything, right? We are at rest. But even at that time, your nervous system is busy sensing different things like what is your heart rate? How is your gut working? How is your other part circulation going? So all that nervous system is 24/7 busy doing all these three functions as well as coordination. Now to perform such a difficult task, you need a highly organized system, isn't it? So if the more complicated the task, the highly organized it must be. So similarly, our nervous system is also organized at different levels. The main division or the principal division of the nervous system is the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. What is central nervous system? Central nervous system is nothing but your brain and the spinal cord. Central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. That is just like the command control center. If you look at a busy airport, you have one command center, right? For every organization, you have one command center which controls all the operations. So your brain and spinal cord or the central nervous system is just like your command center. Apart from that, other than brain and spinal cord, everything else of your nervous system comes under peripheral nervous system. What is the main job of peripheral nervous system? It does the job of communication. When I say communication, it has to be two ways, right? To and fro. Communication is never one way. Now, depending on which way the information is flowing or which way the information is being communicated, you can divide the peripheral nervous system into sensory division and motor division. What does the sensory division do? It communicates the information from the body parts to the command center or the brain. Similarly, the peripheral nervous system transmits the information from the brain to the body parts. For example, if I touch a hot vessel, I know that it is hot, right? I know that when I touch a hot vessel, it is hot. So there my sensory nervous system is working, transmitting the information to the brain. Then immediately you take your hand off, right? You remove the hand from the vessel. That is your motor division working, instructing the hand to immediately take off from that place or the hot area. Now, when I say movement, motor division is controlling movement. This movement can be of two types. We all know that. We have voluntary movements as well as involuntary movements. Now, voluntary movements are your skeletal muscle movements and other movements, okay, which you can control. That division of nervous system that controls the voluntary movements is the somatic nervous system. And the one that controls the involuntary movements, like the movements of your heart or movements of your intestine, that is the autonomous nervous system. Now, this autonomous nervous system can again be classified into two types based on how it is regulating the movement. Either it is activating or controlling. If it is activating the movements or increasing the movement or activity, it is called as a sympathetic nervous system, whereas if it controls or if it prevents the body from overworking, you call it as a parasympathetic nervous system. Now, this is briefly the levels of organization that we have in our nervous system. Now, you take any this level of this organization, let it be the principal, peripheral and central, or the somatic and parasympathetic system, any level of organization you take, it is made up of cells. Our nervous system is densely packed with cells. What are those cells? Now, what are the components of the nervous system? I bet 90% of you or 95% of you must have thought of neurons, because we have been studying all through our school level, right, till the college, that nerve cell is made up of, or nervous system is made up of cells called neurons. Yes, you're right. So, we have neurons. If you remember the structure of a neuron that you have studied in your school, it is something like this, right? And you have branches coming like this, and then you have something like this. Now, this is typically a rough diagram of the neuron. Now, this is a typical diagram of the neuron. Now, if you see, how is a neuron different from any other cell in the body? How is a neuron different? Why is it able to do such an amazing job that the other cell is not able to do? What is the main difference between a neuron cell, a nerve cell, or a stomach cell? Let us see. Now, your neuron also has a cell body or a soma. We call it as soma. Now, this is just like any other cell, right? Soma is just like your cell. All other cells have this cell body which contains all the cell organelles. And a nucleus. But most important thing you have to remember, even for your entrance exams point of view, or basic knowledge, is that neurons lack centrioles. Centrioles, if you remember, they are the organelles needed for cell division. If the cell has to divide, the spindle fibers have to be formed during mitotic division, which originate from your centrioles. Now, these neurons, they lack centrioles, which are important for cell division. So, neurons can never divide. They can never divide throughout the life, and so they are called as amitotic. Neurons are amitotic. Now, apart from this cell body, you have an extra feature of the neuron that is able to give the neuron its ability to do its job. What are those? Those are the neuronal processes. What are those neuronal processes? Processes are nothing but projections coming from some side. Here the projections coming from the cell body. Those projections are your axon and dendrites. Now, when I talk about nervous system, we mostly say it is communicating, transferring, signaling and all that, right? So, to do that, you have a common knowledge is that you should have a proper receiver and a transmitter, right? Until then you can't do any communication. So here the dendrites of a neuron are just like your antennae. At home we all have satellite dish TV connections these days, right? So you have a dish sitting on the top of your terrace. That is nothing but what is it doing? It is picking up signals from the antenna or the satellite, sorry. So these dendrites pick up the signals from the neighboring neurons, and the signals picked up by these dendrites should be transmitted down the length of the neuron. That transmission is done by axon, which is nothing but you can compare with the wire that comes from the dish to your TV, that is transmitting the information from the dish to the TV. So that job is done by the axon. Now this is a basic structure of neuron that we have been studying all these years, but we can see that this is not the only type of neuron. The neuron that you have studied all these years is an example of a multipolar neuron. You call it multipolar because you have many dendrites and axon, many branches of axon coming from a single cell body. But apart from this, if you look at the slide, you also have different neurons which are bipolar neurons and unipolar neurons. What is a bipolar neuron? Bipolar neuron means bi, two. It has only two processes arising from the cell body, one axon and one dendrite. And these bipolar neurons are pretty much rare, and they are seen only in some areas, just like you can say the retina of your eye. And these unipolar neurons are the ones, one means a single process comes from the cell body, and these are also pretty much rare. So multipolar neurons are the ones that are most abundant in your body. Now fine, we talked about neurons, but when I ask you something, you might know that this year Academy Awards Joker has won the best film, and Joaquin Phoenix, who is the star lead actor of the film, has won the best hero. But how many of you know that the tech film also won many other Oscars in technical aspects? We often forget, right? We only remember the lead stars or the heroes of the film, and we often tend to forget the other technicians who have also contributed for the film to be a great one. Similarly, here your neurons are the popular cells or the celebrities of your nervous system. But what we forget is these neurons comprise only for hardly 50%. Initially it was thought that 10%, but now scientists say that these cells contribute only for 50% of the nervous system. Now what is the rest of the 50% made up of? The answer is neuroglia. The rest of the 50% is made up of neuroglia or glial cells. Now initially these cells were thought to be only a supporting cells, or that are mostly involved in packaging or scaffolding. But these days after research, you see that there are many important functions for this neuroglia, few of them which I have listed down for you. Some cells are called as astrocytes. What do astrocytes do? We know that brain requires lot of energy, and more than 25% of whatever energy you input, that is consumed by the brain. So astrocytes are the cells that ensure the efficient supply of material between neurons and the blood capillaries. Similarly, you have to your brain is so precious, or for that matter any organ in your body, you need to protect it from different infections. So microglia are the cells that protect the brain from different bacterial infections or other infections. And you have ependymal cells. We know that there is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid that keeps circulating in the brain and spinal cord. That cerebrospinal fluid is secreted by your ependymal cells. And finally, we have the oligodendrocytes, which secrete the myelin sheath. We know neurons have a myelin sheath or an insulation layered around it, a layer of lipids. So that myelin sheath is produced by none other than your oligodendrocytes, or which are also called as Schwann cells. Now to summarize, till now what we have discussed is, we have discussed the functions of nervous system, we have discussed what are the different organizational levels that are present in the nervous system, we have talked about neurons, which are the primary cells of the nervous system, their types and functions, and we have also talked about neuroglia, the supporting cells, and their functions and types in the nervous system. Now coming to the next segment of our lecture, action potential. What is action potential? I want you to first look at the screen before you. What do you see? You see a girl running, reading, and playing different sports, right? So you see different activities performed by a girl. But beside that picture, you also see another picture. What is that? It is the picture, it looks more like a graph, right? It looks like a spike on a graph. Now, if you are a neurobiologist or if you have studied neuroscience, you would understand the meaning of that picture. That means no matter whatever activity you see the girl or the organism doing, ultimately it is the action potential that is happening in the neurons. Now, let us see what is actually action potential and what happens in it. First, let us understand about resting membrane potential. Resting membrane potential. Now, potential. This sounds like a physics word, right? I'm sure I must have heard it somewhere in my electricity class in my school days, right? So, what is it doing now in nerve physiology class? You might be wondering. So, first let me explain what is potential. If you take a battery, have you ever seen a battery? Or just take out the cell from your remote, TV remote, and try to look at the battery. You see poles. You see a plus sign and you see a minus sign, positive and negative. That means what does it indicate? It means that this is the positive charge and this is the negative charge, and you also see a number on the battery, right? You see a volt, 1.5 volt. If you look at the remote cells, you see 1.5 volt maybe. So, what does it indicate? The positive and negative charges are separated, and this separation of charges has created a potential to do work. And what is the value of that potential? It is measured in volts, and for your battery that might be observing, it could be 1.5 volts or 9 volts or etc. Right. Similarly, now that you understand what is potential, let us talk what is this resting membrane potential. Your neurons that I have talked about are also like batteries. Your neurons are also like batteries. Now, from where do we have these charged particles inside our body? If we take, this is the neuronal cell membrane. If this is the neuronal cell membrane, you have positive charges. Now, the positive charge is contributed by sodium ions and potassium ions. Similarly, you also have negative charged particles, which are the anions, negative charged anions, which are mostly proteins that are present in the neuronal cell membrane. Now, these positive and negative charges are separated along the length of the axon. These positive and negative charges are separated like the one that you see in the picture. So, and this separation of charges creates a membrane potential. But because your neurons are very small, the membrane potential is in millivolts and it is around minus 70 millivolts. Now, if you look at the distribution of these ions in the neuron, you see that there is higher concentration of sodium on the outside and higher concentration of potassium on the inside. So, there is more sodium on the inside and more potassium in the inside. Let me tell you a trick to remember that, because often I hear students getting confused. Just remember a salty banana, a salted banana. We all know that banana is a rich source of potassium, and when you salt it, salt is made up of nothing but sodium chloride. So, salted banana means outside you have salt, which is sodium, inside you have potassium, banana. Okay, I hope you will never forget this now, right? So, outside you have more sodium, inside you have more potassium. Now, there is uneven distribution of ions, and if you have studied biology till degree now, by this time you very well know that nature hates uneven, or it always tries to even or balance everything. Similarly, these ions always keep trying to move across and even out their gradient. What is gradient? A higher to lower concentration. So, this sodium always tries to get in and potassium always tries to go out. Now, first, before going to that topic, let us talk why these ions are like this here. This is not a normal distribution. So, why do we find this distribution? This is because of another protein that is present on your neuronal membrane, which is nothing but your sodium potassium pump. Sodium potassium pump. So pump means it is pumping. What is it pumping? It is pumping ions. If you look at the slide here, you can see that there are ions that are being pumped out. It is pumping 3 sodium ions out and 2 potassium ions inside, and you can see that it is using energy. Why does it need energy? If you, for example, if you have to drop something on the floor, you don't need energy for that, right? But if you have to pick up something from the floor, you need energy because you are going against gravity or against a force. Similarly, here the sodium potassium pump is pumping the ions against their concentration gradients. Already the sodium ion concentration is high on the outside, but still it is pumping sodium out, and potassium is higher inside, but it is still pumping potassium in. So it is constantly working against the concentration gradient. So it needs energy, which is supplied by none other than your ATP or energy currency of the cell. So this pump is mostly responsible for this distribution of the ions. Now how is this distribution going to help us perform any action or become action potential? Let us see. Now I told you that these ions always try to come to balance, right? But unfortunately for the ions and fortunately for us, these ions cannot cross the membrane, because we all know that our cell membranes are selectively permeable, means they do not allow just random movement of any other ions. Just like we all have gates at our homes, right? We all have gate at our home, so you don't let anybody get inside. Just like that, your cells also have channels through which molecules can enter. So these ions can flow only through ion channels. Okay, these molecules can only flow through ion channels, and as I told you, these ion channels are gated. These ion channels are the entry and exit point for your ions, but they are gated. When I say gated, means they are closed or open, or depending on the situation. Now depending on how the opening and closing of these gates is regulated, these ion channels can be classified into ligand gated, voltage gated and mechanical gated. Ligand gated channels means the gates of these channels open upon binding of a ligand. Here ligand is nothing but a small organic or a inorganic molecule. So when a ligand binds, the gates open and let the ions in. Similarly, you have voltage gated channels. That means they respond to differences in the voltage or the potential of the membrane, and you have mechanical gated channels that respond to any differences or mechanical disturbances in the cell membrane. So when I told you, when you touch something you feel it, so that means you have mechanical gated channels on your finger or the sensory neurons of your finger that are responding. Okay, fine. Now you know that ions are unequally distributed, and then you also know that these ions can get in or get out only through the ion channels. That is also true. But how is it doing the action potential, or how is neuron working? Let me tell you that process now. It is very interesting. Remember these numbers: minus 70, minus 55, plus 30 or 40. Now imagine there is an insect crawling on my finger. There is an insect crawling on my finger, I can immediately sense it, right? Now the mechanical gated channels on my finger respond or sense that information, and they are stimulated. Upon the first step is the stimulus. I receive a stimulus. Now what happens? These channels open, leading to the influx of sodium ions. The sodium ions start entering into the cell now. Now what happens? When the sodium ions start entering, sodium ions are positive. Inside of the cell is negative. So what happens? Slowly the inside of the cell becomes positive. Why? Because sodium ions are now moving into the cell. They are moving into the cell. So slowly the potential starts going towards positive side. Now I have drawn here minus 55 volts, right? So what is it? Why did I mention that number? That is because not all stimuli can cause this change. If the stimulus is really weak and the potential or the sodium ions, only little sodium ions have flown through the channel, then it becomes only less positive. okay, and it stops like that. It will never cross this value because there is very low amount of sodium pumping in. Now, if it manages to cross this value minus 55, which you call it as a threshold potential. What is it called? It is called as threshold potential. Means the stimulus should be able to excite the neuron in such a way that the membrane potential crosses this minus 55 millivolts. So, now what happens at this potential? Why is it so important? At this potential, your voltage gated sodium channels start opening. I told you voltage gated means they respond to voltage changes. Now, initially the voltage was minus 70. Now, it has come to minus 55. Now, this causes opening of voltage gated channels and your rapid influx of sodium ion happens. Rapid influx of sodium ion. Now, initially it was minus 70. Now, because there is influx of sodium, it has come to a positive, because positive ions are moving in. So, it has come to now a positive potential. This phase is called as the depolarization phase. It is called as depolarization phase. What do you mean by why we call it as depolarization? Because initially it was a polarized. What is polarized? Separation of charges or creation of poles. You have a positive pole and a negative pole. From polarized state, it has become to a more positive state, and that is called as a depolarization. The nerve cell is depolarized now. Now, again, at this juncture, something happens. At this juncture, what happens? If you look at the voltage gated channel, I want all of you to look at this voltage gated channel. What do you see here? What do you see? You see a small other gate. This is the main gate, and you have a small ball like structure which is called as a inactivation gate. And when this inactivation gate closes, can sodium ions enter in? No, right? So, what happens at this plus 30 millivolts? This inactivation gates of sodium are closed. Inactivation gates of sodium channels, voltage gated sodium channels are closed, and sodium can no longer enter the system. Sodium can no longer enter the cell or the neuron. Now, what happens? Sodium stops coming in. Sodium stops coming in, and at this point, voltage gated potassium channels open. Voltage gated potassium channels open. Means the potassium that is present in the inside can now rush outside. So, what happens now? There is no more positive ions flowing inside, and already the positive ions that are present in the cell are now leaving out. Now, what happens? This brings again the cell towards the negative potential, right? Why is it becoming negative now? Because there is no influx of any new positive sodium ions, because the inactivation gate is closed, and the potassium ions, positively charged ones that are already present in the membrane, are now leaving the cell. So, you have again the cell membrane potential coming back to negative phase, and this phase is called as repolarization phase. This phase is called as repolarization. But life's not simple, my friends. It doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop at reaching the minus 70 potential. Why? Because these potassium channels are lazy, or you can call they respond very slowly. They open late and they also close late. Because there is a delay in closing of these potassium channels, what happens? More potassium is left out than required. More potassium leaves out of the cell than required, causing a undershoot. Means the potential goes from minus 70 to minus 80 to minus 90. Which is much less than the normal resting potential. Now, this phase is called as hyperpolarization phase. This phase is called as hyperpolarization phase. Now, again, I told you the magic pump, the sodium potassium pump now again comes into picture. Here this overall potential is negative, but what has happened? The ions have reversed. The place of ions is reversed. Now, you have potassium on the outside, sodium on the inside. Is this the normal distribution? No, right? You should have this distribution, sodium on the outside, potassium on the inside, salted banana, remember. Now, the sodium potassium pump gets to work here and starts pumping potassium in and sodium out, restoring the membrane potential to -70 again. Now what did we get here? It's a rough diagram, but what did we get? Didn't we get the spike that we got in the first slide? That we saw in the first slide? Yes. So this is, my friends, the action potential. This is how your neuron is able to do the job. Okay. So what happens? To quickly summarize what all I have explained till now, your action potential consists of 4 steps: stimulus, depolarization, repolarization, and hyperpolarization. Now if there is any stimulus that is not able to get it to the threshold potential, these potentials are called as graded potential. What are graded potentials? Graded potentials are all the small stimuli that are not able to cross the threshold potential value. Okay. Now this is how an action potential happens, and again I can show you the summary here. Again I want you to look at the slide. So this is your resting membrane potential, and here you have stimulus which makes the sodium ions move inside, and if it crosses the threshold potential, what happens? The voltage gated channels, sodium channels open, and there is rapid influx of sodium ions which making the cell membrane potential to positive. And at this juncture what happens? Sodium channels close because inactivation gate is closed, and then potassium channels open. So potassium starts moving out. Together these two functions bring back the cell potential to negative state, which you call it as a repolarization phase. And I told you the potassium channels respond slow, or there is a delay in the opening or closing of these channels. So it creates an undershoot, or which you call it as a hyperpolarization phase. And again here your sodium potassium pump comes into picture and brings back the ions to their normal distribution. This is your action potential. Now coming to the next concept, if you have understood action potential, I want to tell you something, which is how does the action potential travel all through the axon. I told you what all changes that we discussed here. If this is the axon, what all changes, the spike that we saw here is occurring only in a small region of a axon. It is occurring only a small region of axon. Now how is this action potential traveling all through the length of the axon? That is by it travels like a wave. Now depolarization here triggers depolarization adjacent. Now action potential here triggers action potential here. So like a wave it crosses the axon. It travels like a wave. In the neighboring regions action potential occurs, and the action potential is travelled from axon hillock or the starting of the axon to the axon terminal. Now if you see, this process is quite slow. You have some axons that are very long, that stretch from your spine to your toe, which are more than 1 meter in length. Imagine this process happening in a 1 meter long axon. How much time would it take to respond? And if it takes long, can we survive? Imagine if axon takes 1 second or 2 seconds to tell you that there's a snake here. Can we survive? No, right? So to solve that problem, nature has come up with a solution which is called myelin sheath. We already know that axons are covered by a layer of insulation called myelin sheath. So what is and there are certain gaps. If you observe the structure, there are gaps on the axon without myelin sheath, and these gaps are called as nodes of Ranvier. Nodes of Ranvier, named after the French scientist who discovered them, French anatomist actually. So what happens in these myelinated axons? What we have talked here is about a non-myelinated axon. Now what happens in this myelinated axon? The signal, instead of traveling like a wave, it leaps or jumps from one node to other node. Actually it is not jumping. If you get into the details, you see that everywhere it travels, and here it gets a boost, and it travels, here it gets a boost. So if you get into the details and study in depth, you will know that the signal is actually getting a boost at every node, but to appear it looks as if the signal is jumping or leaping from one node to the other node. This kind of conduction is called as saltatory conduction. This type of conduction is called as saltatory. Saltatory means, in Latin, saltare means jump or leap, because here the action potential is appearing to be jumping from one node to the other. You call it as a saltatory conduction. Clear? Now, I want to explain one more concept here, which is all or none phenomena. Imagine you are transferring money over online. These days online payments are very useful and handy. So, you are transferring money to your friend. You have transferred 1000 rupees online through various apps that are available. But there are only two cases possible if you observe. Either all 1000 rupees are transferred to your friend, or none of the amount is transferred, isn't it? Either he receives the 1000 rupees or zero. Is there any chance or any scenario where he gets a partial amount like 300, 400 or 700? Is it even possible? No, right? Just like that, just like your online payments, even your action potential is also a all or none phenomena. What does it mean? If a stimulus is strong enough to make the neuron cross its threshold potential, then it definitely passes through all these phases and completes the action potential. If it is not strong enough, it stops as a graded potential. Once it crosses threshold potential, there is no going back or stopping. It doesn't stop at this phase or somewhere here. It definitely completes this whole spike. Now, that phenomenon is called as all or none phenomena. Every action potential, whichever action potential you take, whichever activity you are doing, always the threshold is minus 55. The depolarization happens at plus 30 to 40, repolarization happens, hyperpolarization happens. Now, if you listen attentively, you should able to get a doubt now. If all action potentials are same, how will my brain know the difference between the stimuli? I told you, the studio or this room is hot for me now. Okay, my brain is able to sense that there is an action potential generated. This studio is on fire. How will my brain know that? This is the same action potential. It's always minus 55 plus 30, hyperpolarization minus 80. Now, how will my brain know? How will it sense that is it on fire or is the room only just hot? How will it know? The answer, my friends, is the frequency. Now, look at the slide here. Look at the slide. You look at two pictures. This is an example of an action potential from a sensory neuron. So, if you apply gentle pressure, what do you see? There is a low frequency of action potentials per receptor. Low frequency of action potentials. If you apply more pressure, there is high frequency. So, it's just like an electrical impulse, like a buzz. Okay. Now, low frequency means it's a gentle stimuli or a sensitive stimuli. If it is a high frequency means it's really danger. So, that is how your brain is able to sense the difference. So, if the room is hot, I will get something action potential like this. Now, if the room is on fire, I will get an action potential like this. I hope you all now understood the difference between how your brain is able to sense the difference between the nature of the stimuli. Now, so till now what have we discussed? We have talked about action potential, or where all the action is happening in your neurons. We have talked about how the ions are distributed, across your neurolemma or the axon cell membrane. So, there is more potassium in the inside and more sodium on the outside, and the negativity in the inside of the cell is mostly due to the negative charged proteins that are present inside the cell. They contribute to the negative potential. And one more important thing you have to remember, when I say minus 70 millivolts, it's not the exact value or accurate exact value. Means when I say the temperature is 37 in this room, the temperature 37 is an exact value. The temperature here is around 37 degrees Celsius, that's it. But when I say the inside of the cell is minus 70 millivolts, it's not an exact value. That you always name this with a reference. Here your reference is the outside of the cell. So, outside of the cell you take as a reference and you express the interior of the cell potential. For example, when I say minus 70 millivolts, it means that the inside of the cell is minus 70 millivolt times more negative than the outside. So, outside you take as 0 millivolt. When compared to outside, your interior of the cell is negative by how much? By minus 70 millivolts. I hope you understood. Please remember it. Now, we have talked about what is resting membrane potential when the neuron is at rest without doing anything. When it is at rest, your distribution of ions makes a membrane potential which is equivalent to minus 70 millivolts, and then when a stimulus happens, we have seen that how it crosses the threshold value, and if it doesn't cross the threshold value, how it stops there, and we call those potentials as a graded potentials, which they can't make it to the action potential levels. And we have also talked about different ion channels and how are they regulated, voltage gated, ligand gated and mechanical gated ion channels. And apart from these three, we also have leaky ion channels. I didn't explain it here purposefully not to complicate for you, but we do have leaky ion channels where you have random flow of ions all through the time. There is no regulation of the opening of these channels. So, we have seen how action potential happens, crossing the threshold potential, how it goes to depolarization, and from there how it comes back to repolarization, and from there how it goes to hyperpolarization phase. Now, coming to the next part of the lecture. I hope you all have understood the structure of the nervous system, components and action potential by now. Now, I told you that axon or the nervous system's job is communicating. But what is communication without a partner? Without an audience or without having someone to communicate to, what is communication? So, an axon or a neuron on its own firing all these action potentials, it is of no use unless and until it can communicate this signal to a neighboring neuron. Okay. Now, that communication you call it as synapse. In nervous system, you call this communication as synapse. What is synapse? Synapse is the communication point or junction between two neurons. Synapse is the communication point between two neurons. In fact, if neurons make the structure of your brain or the spinal cord, it is your synapses that make it into a efficient nervous system. I told you neurons never divide throughout your life. You are pretty much dying with the same number of neurons that we are born with. But the number of synapses keep changing depending on how much you are using it. The synapses are reinforced or lost over a period of time. So, synapses are the ones that help in your learning process and all other activities, and these synapses are the one that make your structure of your brain into a efficient system, nervous system. Now, let us learn about these synapses more now. Before going to the details, I would like to explain a basic structure of synapse, how a synapse looks like. Now, this is the basic structure of a synapse. This is called the presynaptic neuron. Presynaptic neuron. I told you two neurons are communicating via synapse, right? So, this is one neuron, this is the second neuron. So, the neuron that is transmitting the signal here, this is called the presynaptic neuron, and the neuron that is on the receiving end, it is called as postsynaptic neuron. It is a postsynaptic neuron, this is a presynaptic neuron. And though I told you that synapse is actually a meeting point of neurons, the two neurons never meet. There is a very minute gap present between these two neurons, and you call it as a synaptic cleft. You call this gap present between two neurons as a synaptic cleft. Now, this is the basic structure of a synapse. All synapses are like this. Now, I told you synapse is important for sending the signal. Now, there is a difference between each signal, right? Some signals are very important. They have to be communicated immediately, and some signals can wait. They can wait. I will tell you the difference. Okay, I went to a restaurant in the morning and I had breakfast there, my favorite breakfast. I had something. this is not an important signal to tell my friends, isn't it? I can wait, I need not tell them, or it can wait, I can tell later that okay, I went to this restaurant and I had a good breakfast there. This is one type of signal. Now in the next type of signal, I went for having breakfast and I saw a very big celebrity there. Maybe I saw our CM sir there, or maybe I saw our secretary sir there. That's a very big signal, right? I want to immediately share that information with all my friends. I want to share that information to all my friends. So now you understand the difference between these two types of signals? I hope you do. So one signal can wait, or it can be carried out slowly. The other signals have to be really fast. For example, there is a fire beside me. I have to start running. So those kind of signals have to be really quickly traveled throughout the axon or through the nervous system. Now depending on how fast the signal has to be traveled, you have two types of synapses. You have electrical synapses and chemical synapses. So what are electrical synapses means? The signal is traveled in the form of a electric signal. The signal is traveled in the form of electric signal, and hence you call it as a electric synapse. Now these synapses are really fast in getting the signal communicated. They are really fast and they activate many neurons at once. These signals or these synapses, electrical synapses, they are very fast and they activate many neurons at one single point of time. The reason why they are pretty fast is that the signal is always transmitted in its pure form. We have seen the signals are always electrical signals, right? So this electrical signal is always transferred in its pure form in the electrical synapse. There is no change in the signal. Hence these signals travel really fast and they can activate many neurons at once. For example, you find these types of synapses in your heart, where the signal is transmitted to the whole muscle of the heart. It makes sense there, right? You want your heart to be actively pumping all the time, not half of the time not responding to your signal. You don't want that. So it makes sense to have electrical synapse in the heart region. Yes, we all agree. Now, if electrical synapse is so good, I don't find any disadvantages with this synapse so far. It is very fast, it is efficient, and it is activating many neurons at once. So what is the need to have even another type of synapse, which is a chemical synapse? I'll tell you. These days we all have WhatsApp group, right? We all are a part of so many WhatsApp groups. At the moment you keep your phone aside for 1 hour, you get 100 or 200 messages. 200 is the minimum number in various WhatsApp groups. Now, there are so many messages in the group and there is one important message. Out of 200, there is one important message that you really have to work or you will get fired from your job. That is that important the message is. Is that message lost? You just quickly ponder over your messages and you somehow lose that important information. Isn't it? Just like that, just like your WhatsApp groups, your electrical synapses make a great disturbance. For some time it is good. If it is in your heart, it is good, electrical synapse. They are in your reflex pathways. It is good because it makes you act quick. But what if they are present everywhere in the body? One small stimulus will start activating many neurons or thousands of neurons at once, and your nervous system will be continuously processing all the unnecessary information, and sometimes you have the risk of losing very important or valuable information. For those cases, we have chemical synapse. To save us from all that overload, our nervous system has chemical synapses. So what are chemical synapses? In chemical synapses, the signal is not transferred in a electrical form. In chemical synapses, the electrical signal that is present is converted to chemical signal, and again this chemical signal is converted back to electrical signal. So there is interchanging of electrical and chemical signals, and that is why the synapses are relatively slow. When I say slow, don't assume that they are lazy and they do the job very late or something like that. They are relatively slow when compared to your electrical synapses, and because mostly due to this conversion of the signal from electrical to chemical and vice versa. But the most important advantage they have is they are very much controllable and they are very precise and selective in what is the information that they are sending and to which neuron they are transmitting the information. They are very precise and selective. Now let us see exactly what is happening. Now this is an image that shows electrical synapse and a chemical synapse. Now in electrical synapse, what did I tell you? the signal transfers through in its pure form. How? In the form of electrical signal only. Like in the synaptic cleft on the postsynaptic neuron, you have gap junctions. Gap junctions, go and revise your cell biology class, you will understand what are gap junctions. Basically they are junctions between two cells that allow passage of molecules. So through gap junctions that are present in the postsynaptic neuron, the electrical signal or the action potential travels to the next neuron. So they are really fast. So all you have to remember is in electrical synapse, what happens? The electrical potential or the signal transfers to the postsynaptic neuron through gap junctions. Now what happens in a chemical synapse? In chemical synapse, I told you the signal is transferred all through the length of the axon and finally it reaches the axon terminus, the tip of the axon. Now this tip of the axon is loaded with something called as synaptic vesicles. Synaptic vesicles, what are these? These are just membrane bound structures carrying neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters means that these are the chemicals that are passing the signal. Okay. Now these synaptic vesicles carry your neurotransmitters and there is action potential happening all through the axon and finally it reaches the synaptic axon terminus. Here what happens? Voltage gated calcium channels are present. This depolarization causes activation of this voltage gated calcium channels, causing rapid influx of your calcium ions. Now your calcium ions are all over inside your synaptic neuron and this influx of calcium will cause the fusion of synaptic vesicles with the membrane. These vesicles now fuse with the membrane and release the contents outside, which bind to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron and thereby cause again depolarization here in the postsynaptic neuron. So what is happening here? The electrical signal is changed to chemical signal and this chemical signal again is changed to electrical signal. Here these receptors are nothing but I told you ligand gated ion channels. So this neurotransmitter acts as a ligand and it causes opening of ion channels, further causing depolarization or transmission of the signal from one neuron to the other. So this is about synapses and these neurotransmitters can be of different types. They can be excitatory or inhibitory. Excitatory neurotransmitters means they promote depolarization in the postsynaptic neuron, which makes it to generate an action potential. Whereas inhibitory neurotransmitters, they cause hyperpolarization of postsynaptic neuron, which makes it more difficult to get excited. So they are inhibitory. So excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters. So what did we discuss till now? We have in a nutshell in this whole lecture we have talked about nervous system, its organization, and we have also talked about different types of nerve cells, that is the neurons and the neuroglia. We have talked about the different steps of action potential, how it is happening and what are the different ions and ion channels involved and how it is propagated. We have also talked about saltatory conduction when it comes to propagation, and we have talked about all or none phenomena and how the frequency changes for each stimuli, and we have also talked about synapses or communication between neurons, where we have talked about the basic types of synapses and what are the advantages and disadvantages of each given synapse. Now application time. Let us apply all the knowledge that you have studied or learnt in this lecture. Okay, let me ask you a question. Try to find an answer for that. My first question is, if neurons are amitotic, I told you in the remember starting of the lecture, right? Because neurons lack centrioles and they are amitotic, they can't divide. Now, why do brain tumors occur? You might have heard of it, right? Brain tumor, brain tumor. So what are these brain tumors actually? Yeah? Think of it. I'll tell you the answer for this question. Brain tumors are mostly gliomas. They are the tumors of the glial cells. I told you neurons can't divide, so you can't have neurons tumors, but you definitely can have glial cells which can divide. Glial cells can cause tumors. So most of the brain tumors that you see routinely are the neurogliomas. They are called as gliomas, which are tumors of different neuroglial cells. Okay. Now I told you the answer for this question. I want you to find out the answer for my next question. The next question, listen to it carefully. I told you that neurons have an insulation, layer of insulation called the myelin sheath, and it helps in speedy transmission of the signal or propagation of the signal. It helps in speed or quicker propagation. I told you that there are gaps on the myelin sheath which are called nodes of Ranvier. Now my question is, what happens if myelin sheath is continuous without nodes of Ranvier? Did you understand? Or I'll repeat it for you. What happens if there are no gaps on the myelin sheath? What if it is continuous without nodes of Ranvier? What happens to the impulse propagation? Will it go at a better place, or will it stop, or what happens? Will the neurons function? It is all up to you to think and find an answer for that. And on that note, I would like to conclude this lecture, and thank you so much.